Justin, this is my response to your paper 2. Controversies in Pharmacy. The pharmaceutical field is wrought with scandals and infractions of rules. Of course, the pharmaceutical field is bound by dozens of laws and hundreds of regulations to ensure the integrity of the practice, but there will always be those who flaunt the rules in order to turn a profit themselves. From rules regarding what a pharmacist can and cannot sell to defining what exactly negligence of practice means, almost every aspect of a pharmacist's job, you need an apostrophe there. Since it's just one pharmacist, right, a pharmacist, then you need the apostrophe S. Job is obligated to abide by these rules lest their license or practice be called in jeopardy. However, many argue about whether or not pharmacists are regulated enough or more legislation is needed. So to explore this controversy, a few court cases will be summarized and a few legislative terms will be explored in the context of the pharmaceutical field. Lovely. The only thing I might suggest there is that your sentence from rules regarding this is a long list there, from rules to defining. Yeah, I just think that would probably be better split up into multiple sentences. I think it would be clearer. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before, but I feel like a lot of what I end up, a lot of times people at this point in their writing careers are like, you know how to write really complex sentences, and so sometimes I feel like, sometimes I am suggesting to people places where a really short sentence that's not complex would actually be more powerful. Anyway, might actually be more powerful, I would say. To understand the legislation that governs fields like the pharmaceutical industry, it must be defined. These laws are known as tort laws, or any law that pertains to negligence of any kind. So I think what you mean is tort laws are laws that pertain to negligence of any kind, though I'm certainly not a lawyer. So I think you could tweak that a little bit. A tort is, quote, violation of a duty imposed by law or an individual based upon a relationship with another individual. Okay. You know, I feel you have a lot of strengths as a writer. So I'm not going to talk much about like suggestions for how to make that smoother. I feel like you probably will have some ideas. But maybe like it's like you have one sentence that says, okay, so the first sentence is about there's legislation. Then you need to talk about some of that legislation is tort law. Or maybe you want to say some of that legislation is about violations of duty, and violations of duty are known as tort. I don't know. You can pull that apart and put it back together. I think you can make it better. The individual in this case are the pharmacist, and of course the other parties are the patients with whom they are all serving. In all, I'd love to see a whom used correctly. I love it. In all cases, the plaintiff are the one who initiates the lawsuit, the patient, and the defendants are the pharmacists in question. Usually there are 4 parts of a tort law that must be acknowledged before a patient can file the lawsuit. First, there must be a duty owed between the defendant and the plaintiff, or breach of duty between the two. Causation of the breach is due to the negligence or malpractice of the defendant. And finally, what damages or harm has been done to the plaintiff. Okay. Another place it might be nicer to have multiple sentences, but I also understand if you kind of just want to like zoom through that because it's not really an important part of your main argument, it doesn't seem like. The 2 ways that a tort law can be enacted upon is when there is proven negligence or malpractice done by the defendant. Negligence is defined as when a person has failed to provide the care due to a patient that any other person could have provided. Malpractice is a form of negligence, but where they differ is that malpractice pertains to when a licensed professional knowingly does not provide the manner of service accordingly to their station. For example, one could commit negligence when providing prescription pills that have not been counted correctly, but one commits malpractice when knowingly underfilling the prescription bottle so as to cheat a patient. Gotcha. As one can see, there are a multitude of actions that are taken as negligence in the field of pharmacies. The field itself is very open to human error. Is it? I mean, I guess all fields are open to human error, and maybe I'm thinking more than when I read that the bigger issue, I think, is that the human errors in pharmacy are much more likely to cause serious problems than, if I accidentally leave 2 points off of somebody's grade. It's not nearly as bad as giving someone the wrong medication, right? Okay, anyway, obviously. However, what happens and who is liable when a pharmacist has been caught in negligence of their practice is connected to a larger chain. Oh, okay, this is a question. However, what happens and who is liable? I think a comma after that liable would help your reader to signal your reader that that's going to be a question. However, what happens and who is liable when a pharmacist that has been caught in negligence of their practice is connected to a larger chain of pharmacies? Love it. You're also reminding me, I need to go pick up my prescriptions after this. Okay, when such an occasion occurs, a special form of negligence is brought into play. Vicarious liability comprises when both the pharmacist and the larger company at which they are employed are sued in tandem with each other. Ooh. The two forms in which vicarious liability can be found are when pharmacists committed, or when pharmacists commit the act of negligence. I feel like you want to present tense there, or maybe have committed. Maybe you do want past the act of negligence under the scope of acceptance by the company, and when the damage done to the plaintiff exceeds the amount of reparation that the lone pharmacist can supply. Right, so they want $6 billion, and you're like, hey, we make good money, but I don't have $6 billion. Okay. Can supply to the large company sued as well. In cases such as these, the determining factor whether or not the pharmacist or a company is liable for the damages done is left to the jury's decision. Usually pinning the blame on the company is more common as it becomes more difficult to determine the scope of practice for the pharmacist. Interesting. The most dangerous forms of negligence do not happen when supplying retail drugs, but behind the scenes in the compounding labs. I was hoping I'd learn more about compounding labs in this paper, and it seems like I'm going to. Compounding is one of the oldest aspects of a pharmacist's duties. Compounding is defined as a, quote, process by which the pharmacist or physician combines, mixes, or alters ingredients to create a medication tailored to an individual's patient's needs. Just as in the laboratory setting, one small mistake on the part of the pharmacist while compounding can cause huge adverse effects in the finished product. One of the most relevant and most cited cases dealing with erroneous compounding is the case of Fleet versus Hollenkamp. Ooh. In this court case, the defendants Fleet and Sample, a pharmaceutical company, had added a potentially toxic material to the compounded medicine of one of their patients. After the patient had recovered from the improper side effects of the medication, a lawsuit was filed. The court ruled, quote, when a druggist requested to compound a certain medicine, grinds the different ingredients in a mill used to grind poisonous drugs. Oh my God. Without properly cleansing it, the rule as to the degree of care and diligence necessary to exempt a party from liability does not apply. But a druggist is bound to know that the properties of the medicines he vends, and he and his servants are liable even though he has extraordinary care and diligence in compounding medicine. Okay, that's terrifying. This means that regardless of whether or not a patient experiences adverse side effects, or not, you got one too many or nots there, I think. If a pharmacist has not followed proper compounding regulations and it can be proven, they are liable for any damages they cause. Okay, try not to freak out about this later. With the boom of pharmacies in the 1900s, the American government needed new ways to keep them in check as the pharmacies requested to open a compounding lab as well. To solve this, this is like building off of your, I'm imagining it's building off of your first paper. To solve this, the FDA created the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act of 1938. Wow, it's that long ago, huh? To primarily place more restrictions on the ability of pharmacies around the country to compound new drugs. The term new drugs are defined. I want to say is defined, but this is legal language, so let's not quibble about it. Okay. Any drug not generally recognized among experts qualified by scientific training and experience to evaluate the safety and effectiveness of drugs as safe and effective for use under the conditions prescribed, recommended, or suggested in the labeling thereof. Maybe you're going to become a lawyer, Justin. In the court case of Jeans versus Caraway. Oh, okay, right. For some reason, I lost my train of thought. I don't know why. It might have helped me as a reader if you had added a transition there, like, for example, in the court case of Jean versus Caraway. Might be helpful. The plaintiff, Dalton Jeans, had gone to the defendant's pharmacy for medication for sinus problems. Caraway had been, I think you don't need that comma, right? Caraway had been a pharmacist for 30 plus years, comma, and had made a business of compounding drugs from other over-the-counter drugs. So scared of that. Okay, after prescribing Jeans with the necessary medication, Caraway neglected to properly label the bottle with the proper information regarding possible side effects and health risks in taking the drug. Jean inevitably, of course something terrible is going to happen. Like, I know you're not telling me about this case because everything was fine. She inevitably suffered from this negligence and suffered brain damage after an intensive stay at the hospital. In court, Caraway attempted to claim ignorance of the law but was overruled and held as liable for the damages. This court case held the standard for which pharmacists must now label all their prescription drugs with proper information lest they be held liable for any damages. Cool. It's especially relevant to compounds that include intoxicants and narcotics. And I mean, you might know. So opiates fall under narcotics. I think. Okay. Just, obviously those are the ones we've been freaking out most about lately, with good reason. The sale of intoxicants and narcotics is very carefully monitored by the FDA. Any liquid that has even the barest trace of alcohol is classified as a liquor, and only those with proper licensing can sell it. Of course, the patient cannot be a minor, and the proper information must be obtained if the ones obtaining the medicine are said to be the minor's guardians. However, while a pharmacist can obtain a permit for the sale of liquor for the sake of compounding medicine, they're not allowed to sell malt liquor to patients or even to other pharmacists who are interested in compounding their own medicine. The primary legislative piece that governs the sale of narcotics is the Harrison Act of 1915. In this act, it states that wow, that's an old one too. It states that those who wish to sell, compound, import, I think you don't need the S there, import or prepare in any way narcotic materials must register their names and place of business. Sorry, for some reason I thought we were in a direct quote here, but we're not. Okay. After registering on July 1st of every year, the pharmacist must pay a tax on every narcotic they have sold over the last year. Over the past year. Accordingly, to oversee the sale of these controlled substances, all those who have registered under the Harrison Act must keep a record of the narcotics that are sold in the event an auditor requires access to such documentation. Therefore, it made the sale of narcotics and other controlled substances illegal without, first registering through the proper channels or keeping thorough records. Violators of this act can expect $2,000 in fines and potentially 5 years in prison. That's it? Okay, well, I guess I'm a cruel person. Sorry, time check. Okay, we got time. What I am wondering then, I guess, is, you don't have any reason to really cover this, but it's just got me wondering about, I happened to find this book about Prohibition in Kansas a couple weeks ago. And it had some numbers about how many people, the ailments that they said they had suffered, which required them to have alcohol. So, these pharmacists were selling people alcohol for medicinal purposes during Prohibition. And anyway, it just made me wonder about that. But okay, the values in this controversy are health, accountability, and competence. The violation of health is obviously stated. The pharmacists that are caught negligent with their practice are violating the health of their patients, in many cases endangering their very lives. The pharmacists are being held accountable for their actions and are being held in liability for the damage their products can cause. Finally, those pharmacists are caught in negligence of their practice by compounding erroneously or are mislabeling their medications Finally, those pharmacists that are caught in negligence of their practice by compounding erroneously or are mislabeling their medications are being incompetent at their jobs for which they are licensed, I think you need a D there, right? Professionals. These pharmacists held the power in their relationships with the patients, but once they are taken to court, the power shifts and the patients hold the power due to ruling of the courts. The pharmaceutical industry has undergone their fair share of losses, controversies, and lawsuits from misleading medication to compounding. Sorry, we're about to run out of time in the video, so I'm just many can still this to be inadequate for governing such a complex field. Lovely. You have a solid writing voice, and it feels like, you have the confidence in your writing voice that feels like we can trust this person, which is what we are looking for. Okay, so overall, I pointed out a few little typos and things. It's a great paper, and for your revision, there's just those few little things I was mentioning about kind of maybe reorganizing a few of those sentences. So it shouldn't be a lot of revision work for you because you've got lots